Trying to wait for the recording to get started. There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our town hall. My name is Michael Schlein. I'm the division administrator for the Charities and Legal Services Division. Today's town hall will provide an overview of apostilles and discuss whether Maryland notaries public are authorized to perform an apostille. Hint, the answer is no, and we're going to talk about that a little more in detail here soon. We're delighted to offer this series of town halls to educate Maryland notaries publics and those interested in Maryland notary public issues. As indicated in the email notification about today's town hall, this town hall will be recorded. A link to the recording will be available on the Secretary of State's website under the Notaries tab. By choosing to join the town hall today, you are consenting to the recording. The content and presentation provided is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal advice. With me today is our Assistant Secretary of State for Finance and Administration, Fred Smalls. His division handles the apostilles as well as some notary officers. Please know the platform restricts the attendance, not the Office of the Secretary of State. And another important point to mention in response to some of the emails we receive, attendance is not required. It is not required to attend this town hall. This town hall is not the course of study or a substitute for the course of study requirement that became effective in the law October 1st, 2021. The town hall is an outreach to our notaries public and those interested in notary public topics. Time is reserved at the end for questions. You may find that your questions are answered as the presentation progresses. You may place your questions in the chat box, but in order to prevent confusion about the source of the response, please do not answer the questions in the chat box. Put questions in there. Do not answer them. Our staff, our notary officers, may answer that question in the chat box, or they may hold it to ask at the end of the town hall. So please, if you put a question in the chat box, you might be tempted to answer, but don't answer somebody else's question. Let us take care of answering those. Notary officers are available to answer your questions and provide information only, not legal advice. Legal advice, contact legal counsel who specialize in a particular area of the law about which you have a question or concern. So we're going to try to answer all questions, and of course we'll invite questions at the Q&A part at the end. And as we begin, I ask you please mute your microphone. You may keep your camera on if you like, but definitely mute your microphone so as to minimize interruption. And so I'm going to get us started here with the first couple of pages, and then I'm going to bring on Fred. So today's, again, topic is a Maryland notary public authorized to perform apostilles. So this topic sources of legal authority used here to cover this area. Some of it's in the Maryland Constitution. Some of it's in the Annotated Code of Maryland. Some of it is in the Code of Maryland Regulations. And again, if you don't have all this written down, we're going to have this recording posted online within a few days of this town hall. So you'll be able to watch it again at your leisure and take any notes that you may not have caught this first time through. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fred Smalls. Fred, it's all you. Fred, aren't you there? Uh-oh.
Now, how's that?
There you go. There he is.
I followed your instructions, Mike, and I muted also. Let me start over. My name is Fred Smalls. I'm the Assistant Secretary of State. And as Mike mentioned, I manage the division that is responsible for the apostille process in the state of Maryland. To sort of put things in context for everyone, I thought it was valuable information for you to know. In FY22, fiscal year 22, which began July 1, 2021 and ended June 30, 2022, the apostille desk processed 24,250 apostille certifications. And we're on track for FY24 to process in excess of 58,000. So we get a lot of apostille coming in, whether they're walk-in customers or whether they're mail-in customers. Now, I'll point out that every one of those 50+ thousand apostilles do not require a notary public's seal, and we'll cover that as we move forward. So this first slide just gives you a snapshot of what an apostille isn't. It's not a notarial act. It's not an act that can be performed by a private individual or a business, and it's not something that is issued by an attorney. Next slide. The Office of the Secretary of State, located in Annapolis, is the only authorized authority to issue apostilles in the state of Maryland. That's very important to remember that no one else. Now, let me just point out that there are a number of businesses, services that provide apostille service to customers, but they are not actually performing the apostille process. They all end up bringing their documents, their customers' documents, to us. So we're the only stop in Maryland for apostilles, and I'll go again into a little more detail as we progress. Mike? So the apostille, just to give you a little background on the apostille and what it is, it's a form of certification that was set out in 1961 by the Hague Convention. The Hague being the World Court. It was designed to allow the legal authority for countries to have their documents legalized and for use internationally. It's very important for me to point out that an apostille is absolutely not for use in the United States. It is for international use only. All non-Hague countries, and there are 100+ countries who have signed on to this agreement or treaty, but there are a number of countries that do seek certification of their documents that are non-Hague countries. They receive what's called a standard certification, and as you'll see, an apostille by form is required, and it's a bit different in its format. The apostille form authenticates the signature of a public official, such as a notary, on a document for use, as I stated, in another country. The form is made up of specifically numbered fields, 10 fields, that any deviation or exclusion of those fields can cause a country to reject that apostille. And when you think about the use of apostilles, such as things including adoptions, foreign adoptions, etc., getting it right the first time is very important. It's key to point out that the apostille does not validate the content of the document. We are looking for, on certain documents, the seal of you, the notary, and the confirmation from the clerk of the circuit court in the county where you're commissioned that you are a notary in good standing in that county. Those are the things that we look for. The type of document is not nearly as important to us as what I just stated. Your stamp, your notary stamp, and the clerk of the court's confirmation that you are in good standing. Next. A notary is an individual that verifies the legal validity of a document's signature, and an apostille is a document that guarantees the international legality of a document. An apostille certifies the authenticity of the signature of the public official who signed the document. Again, that's you. The capacity in which that public official acted, and where appropriate, the identity of the seal or stamp which the document bears. Again, that's your notary seal. Notarized documents must be taken to the clerk of the circuit court for certification in the county where the notary is commissioned, as I've stated previously. You can visit the U.S. Department of State for any details regarding the use of an apostille. The U.S. Department of State and the World Court, The Hague, collaborate very closely together. All 50 states in the U.S. certify documents for international use. And they all follow for apostilles the same Hague Convention in terms of the elements of the apostille form. Again, 1961 was the Hague Treaty. The U.S. joined and signed on to the Hague Treaty a few years after that. We are constantly, well, I won't say constantly, but whenever there's a country that was previously not a part of the Hague signs on to the Hague Treaty Agreement, then we are notified generally by the Department of State that a country has joined, and we add them to our list in our system. Right? So this details or shows you the flow of the process. You, the notary, will be the first step in many of the documents that will eventually be apostilled. The first step is to notarize the document. The second step is the document then is brought by the client to the circuit court in the county where you're commissioned. As I stated, the clerk of the court will then attach a cover document to their document stating that you are, in fact, in good standing in that county. And the final step for an apostille is the client brings or mails the document to our office for us to authenticate. And it's still, again, important for me to point out, again, that during this process, we are not nearly as concerned with the content of the document as we are those first two steps being completed. Now, that's not to say that we totally ignore the document. Obviously, if there's a document, and part of this, to a degree, I think will fall to you also as a notary, where you have the option of refusing to notarize certain documents that you may feel are inappropriate. We too will look at a document, and if we feel that there is something that's not quite what it should be with the document after it's passed through a notary's hands and the county, we too have the option of refusing to certify or apostille a document. Right? So what you see here on the right side of the screen is the official apostille. You see there are 10 elements, and again, each one of these 10 elements in this document must be filled in and completed. That is generated by our office. I want to draw your attention to the top portion just above the apostille box, where it says this apostille is not valid for use anywhere within the United States of America, its territories or possessions. This apostille does not certify the content of the document, again, as I've stated. State documents or state-issued documents and county-issued documents do not require a notary seal. That's because 99.9% of the time, we have that state or county official's name in our system. So the notarization and the county certification for those types of documents are not required. Those include birth certificates, death certificates issued by Vital Records, adoption papers that are signed off, copies of driver's license, etc., are not required to have a notary stamp. But we receive a large volume of company documents. Those are powers of attorneys, articles of incorporation, etc., which do require both the notary seal and county certification on each document. And I think it's important for me also to point out that the apostille is attached. If you have a multi-page document, 20 pages, the apostille is just on the top page of the document. We staple it together, and it should never be removed from that document while the client is in process of taking care of whatever business matters they're working towards. Personal documents like school transcripts, and some of you have had some issues with certifying, or rather notarizing, school transcripts. When I get those calls from our clients that a notary refused to notarize a transcript or a diploma, I usually will tell them that they should write a separate statement that states that the document, the diploma, the transcript, is an authorized document that is attached to that document, and that's what you witness their signature on. There are other documents. No, you're fine, Mike. There are other documents, passports, etc., also that require the same process, that they write a statement that says they certify that this is a true document. They sign that before you, the notary, and it then goes through the other steps for the apostille. Mike? Just to reiterate that the apostille is for documents to be used in countries that participate in the 1961 Hague Convention. Again, as I stated before, the U.S. joined the Hague several years after the 1961 convention convened, and every state in the country uses the apostille process. For any references, you'll see below. And I think Mike may have mentioned that these references will be available as part of this recording. Mike? Next slide.
Yep, I had to unmute myself there. Picking up here from Fred, just kind of going over a few more things regarding notaries here. And thank you, Fred, for all that information. Summarizing, is a Maryland notary authorized to perform apostilles? No. big and exciting no over there on the left-hand side of the screen, right? The Maryland notary does not perform the apostille. Assistant Secretary Smalls had mentioned, it's oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes a first step in a process that leads to an apostille. But the Maryland notary is not the one performing the apostille. So what if I'm a lawyer and a Maryland notary? Am I still no, right? Only the Secretary of State performs the apostille, administers the apostille, whatever verb you want to use there as the action verb. The Maryland Secretary of State is the only one that does the apostilles in the state of Maryland. And like Fred said, we get people ask us questions and, can I, how do I get licensed to perform apostilles? You don't. Only the Secretary of State's office performs the apostilles in the state of Maryland. After that process that Fred previously described plays out, right? Notary, notarization occurs, clerk of the court authenticates the notary, Secretary of State is authenticating on top of that. Secretary of State's office is handling that. And then, talking about enforcement, right? You can't, as a notary, we've talked about on different town halls, notary's authority and notary's power. And you can't pretend to be able to do something that you're not allowed to do. And as a notary, you're not allowed to do an apostille. You can't put that form, that apostille form, on a document and say you apostilled it. Right? As a notary public, you do and perform the notary public duties on a particular document for an individual requesting the notarial act. The notary could get in trouble if they exceed their authority or do something that's not allowed under the law or the regs, and could get in trouble as much as having a commission revoked. If something like that would ever happen, there's a right to notice, an opportunity to request a hearing from the Secretary of State. And those hearings are informal hearings and held subject to this authority that's listed here. And an enforcement action taken against a notary doesn't preclude somebody from seeking and obtaining any other criminal or civil remedy provided by law for the redress of harm caused by the notary. So, what's the take home on this page, right? As a notary, you want to know what your authority is, what you're authorized to do. And as a notary public, you're going to notarize for individuals that request a notarial act. You're not actually doing the apostille. You're not affixing the apostille, and you can't profess to somebody that you can do an apostille and try to do that for them. Right? The Secretary of State's office is the one that does that. And previously, Fred mentioned too about talking about diplomas or other personal documents that you may need to have notarized, or somebody may ask for you, the notary, to notarize. And it's important to remember what authority and what notarial acts you're authorized to perform. You have acknowledgments, you have oaths and affirmation, you have witness or attest to signature on a document, the certified copy or certified copy, tangible copy of an electronic record, certified copy. And those are your big types of notarial acts that can be performed. And there's certificates for each of those types of notarial acts that can be affixed. And, it's important to think, okay, what does this person need, and what am I being asked to do, or what am I being asked to notarize, and what is it that I do when I'm notarizing? I'm not going to go down that long trail. We had an entire town hall about what types of notarial acts a notary can perform and what type of certificates go on documents. If you want more information about that, read up in the handbook, watch that town hall. Goes into a lot of detail about types of notarial acts that a notary can perform. So, be aware of those things as you're getting a request to notarize, but also just be aware that, as a notary, you're acting as the notary public. You are not apostilling the document. There's no, we're the only ones at the Secretary of State's office, Fred's division, that does handle that. And so just some address information here. Our street address, if anybody ever needed to do a walk-in for an apostille, mailing address, email address. If you have questions about certifications, you can reach out to the certifications desk. And Fred, I don't think I think at the moment we still don't have walk-ins allowed, right? So there's some work being done on the building, but in general that will resume.
Yes.
And so just, you know, before you drive down here, make sure you check out the Secretary of State's website, SOS, like Secretary of State, right? SOS.Maryland, Maryland is spelled out, .gov, SOS.Maryland.gov, and check out the certifications page and look for any notices about that, about walk-in services, or, you know, if you need to mail them in at a particular point in time, do that homework before you come down. We don't want you to waste a trip if you're trying to come down on a date where you're not going to be able to get into the building for walk-in service. It's not fun for anybody to have to make that trek just to find out you can't do a walk-in service. So make sure you're checking the website before you come down. So we're going to go to
before we go to questions, I do have one last comment I want to make, a point I want to make, and that is regarding out-of-state documents. We do not certify or apostille any out-of-state documents that are issued by the state or county in another state. That is death certificates, birth certificates from New York, for example, we will not certify. However, other types of business documents that come from another state, as long as you as the notary notarize it, it goes through the process. We do those every day because, again, we're not as interested in the content of the document as we are your seal and the county certification. So I just wanted to make sure I made that point, that if for some reason you have someone who presents an out-of-state official document to you, it's not something that we would certify. So save yourself some ink on your stamp pad.
Yep. Hey, thank you, Fred. And I see a couple of questions about fees in the chat box. And what's the charge for an apostille from the Secretary of State?
The fee for to apostille a document is $2 per document. The document can have 20 pages, but if it stands as one document, it's $2.
Yep, and that's $2 that the Secretary of State is charging. And I think the questions that went about fees, also people were asking about fees a notary can charge, and I'll touch that before we get to the general Q&A as well. And remember, a notary can charge only what's allowed under the law and the regs for fees. So right now, a notary can charge $6 per notarial act for a traditional notarial act and $25 for a remote notarial act. And then you have travel fees and stuff, and again, whole sections of town halls that cover fees and talk about that stuff. But I wanted to throw that out before we wrap up and then head to Q&A as well. So the fee for the apostille is paid to the Secretary of State because we're the ones doing the apostille. And a notary public is allowed to charge $6 per notarial act on a traditional notarial act on paper, and if it's a remote notarial act, $25. So just before we head to Q&A here in closing, first, thank you, Fred. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Very good information. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And as shared earlier and indicated in the email notification, today's town hall was recorded. A link to the recording will be available on the Secretary of State's website. That's usually up within a few days of the recording, few business days of the recording. And by choosing to join the town hall, you had consented to the recording as part of the town hall. And just remember that the content and presentation is provided for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be legal advice. Hopefully this town hall was helpful and informative. We've conducted several town halls throughout 2022 on a variety of topics. I'm sure we'll have more in 2023. And when we have all that information in a schedule, we'll let everybody know. Feel free to drop a topic in the chat box. If you have a suggestion about topics related to Maryland law, regulations, handbook, we're happy to consider them, ideas, and as long as they're within the scope of our authority and we have the capacity to do that. Once again, the town hall was recorded. The recording will be posted on the Secretary of State's website. Refer to it as often as you'd like. Watch it back. And again, if you missed any of those links or notes, it'll be on that recording. You can grab that from the recording as soon as it's online. I appreciate everybody joining.